The conference room was dead silent. We were reviewing the Q3 earnings report, and the only sound was the hum of the projector and the rhythmic tapping of the CEO's pen. My phone was on the table, face up. I always kept it on silent during board meetings. But I had a rule. If it rings twice from the same number, or if it's an unknown number that calls back to back, I answer. It's a dad rule. The screen lit up. Unknown caller. I ignored it. 3 seconds later, it lit up again. Unknown caller. I apologized to the CEO, stood up, and walked into the hallway. I expected a telemarketer. I expected a wrong number. I answered, annoyed. This is Robert. Mr. Reynolds. The voice on the other end wasn't an adult. It was a child, high-pitched, terrified, and sobbing. It took me a second to recognize him. It was Sam, my son's 12-year-old best friend. Sam, I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. What's wrong? Why are you calling me? It's Leo, Sam screamed into the phone. He can't breathe. He's clutching his throat. He's turning blue, Mr. Reynolds. You have to come. My heart stopped. The world tilted on its axis. Where is he? I barked, already running toward the elevator. Is he with the nurse? We're in a nurse's office. Sam cried. She won't give him a shot. She says he's faking it. Then I heard it. In the background, clear as day, a woman's voice cut through the chaos. It was sharp, dismissive, and cold. Sam, put that phone away immediately. You're violating school policy. Leo is just having a panic attack. Stop the drama and sit down. Then I heard a sound that will haunt me until the day I die. A wheeze. A desperate, high-pitched whistle of air trying to force its way through a closing windpipe. I'm 5 minutes away, I told Sam. Don't hang up. Mrs. Gable, the school nurse, thought she was dealing with a dramatic preteen. She thought she was the ultimate authority in that little white room. She didn't know that I was already doing 80 miles an hour down the interstate. She didn't know that I wasn't coming to pick up a sick child. I was coming to save a life and destroy hers. To understand the sheer magnitude of Mrs. Gable's negligence, you have to understand Leo. Leo isn't a fragile kid. He plays soccer, he climbs trees, he scrapes his knees, and doesn't cry. But Leo was born with a genetic loaded gun pointed at his head, a grade 6 peanut allergy. This isn't the kind of allergy where he gets a rash. This isn't the kind where he gets an upset stomach. This is anaphylaxis. If Leo ingests even a trace amount of peanut protein, something as small as a crumb, his immune system goes nuclear. His airways swell shut. His blood pressure drops. Without epinephrine, he has about 10 minutes before brain damage sets in. 15 minutes before cardiac arrest. We have lived with this fear since he was 2 years old. We don't eat at Thai restaurants. We read every label in the grocery store 3 times. Leo knows the drill. He carries a waist pack with 2 EpiPens everywhere he goes. At the beginning of a school year, I did what I always do. I scheduled a meeting with the principal and the school nurse to review Leo's 504 plan, the legal document that outlines his medical needs. That was the first time I met Mrs. Gable. She was a woman in her late 60s, with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. She sat with her arms crossed, looking at Leo's medical file with disdain. I've been a nurse for 40 years, Mr. Reynolds, she said, interrupting me as I explained the symptoms of anaphylaxis. I worked in an ER in the 80s. I think I know how to handle a stomach ache. It's not a stomach ache, I said, trying to keep my voice even. It's a life-threatening airway obstruction. If he says his throat itches, or if he starts wheezing, you do not wait. You administer the EpiPen immediately. Then you call 911. She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. You parents today, she sighed. Everyone has a diagnosis. Everyone is special. In my day, kids ate dirt and they were fine. Now, every time a child gets anxious about a test, they claim they can't breathe. I leaned across the desk. The principal looked uncomfortable, but he didn't stop her. Mrs. Gable, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I don't care about your opinions on modern parenting. I care about the law. This is a medical directive signed by his immunologist. If you hesitate, my son dies. Do we understand each other? She gave a tight, fake smile. I will follow protocol, Mr. Reynolds. I don't need you to tell me how to do my job. I walked out of that meeting with a bad feeling in my gut. I thought about pulling him out of the school. but it was the best district in the state. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that even if she was grumpy, she was a trained medical professional. Surely, in a crisis, she would act. I was wrong. I was dead wrong. Arrogance is dangerous, but arrogance combined with authority is lethal. Mrs. Gable didn't just believe that kids were softer these days. She believed that she was the arbiter of truth. She believed that her intuition outweighed medical science. And on Tuesday, October 14th, that belief almost killed my son. It was a bake sale. It's always a bake sale. The school had a nut-free policy, of course. But policies rely on people, and people make mistakes. A parent had brought in homemade chocolate chip cookies. They swore they were nut-free. They probably were, technically, but they had likely been baked on the same sheet pan used for peanut butter cookies the night before. Cross-contamination. Invisible, tasteless, and deadly. Leo bought a cookie during lunch. He took one bite. He told me later that the reaction was instant. A metallic taste in his mouth. A sudden, sharp itching in his ears. His tongue felt like it was swelling up to fill his entire mouth. He didn't panic. We had trained him for this. He dropped the cookie. He grabbed Sam, his best friend. "Nurse," Leo wheezed. Now, they ran to the nurse's office. It was on the first floor, near the main entrance. By the time they got there, maybe a 2-minute run, Leo was already struggling for air. The hives were starting to bloom on his neck. They burst into the office. Mrs. Gable was sitting at her desk, filling out paperwork. She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "Walking feet, boys," she scolded. "What is the emergency?" "I ate peanuts," Leo gasped, clutching his throat. "Need AP." This was the moment. This was the moment where training should have kicked in. This was the moment where a competent nurse would have seen the fear in the child's eyes, heard the stridor in his breath, and reached for the auto-injector. Mrs. Gable didn't move. She looked at Leo. She looked at the clock. It was 1:15 p.m., right after lunch. "Calm down, Leo," she said, standing up slowly. "You're all worked up. Let me check your temperature." "He can't breathe," Sam yelled. "He has an allergy. It says so in his file." "Quiet, Sam," Mrs. Gable snapped. She walked over to Leo, who was now leaning against the examination cot, wheezing loudly. She put a hand on his forehead. "No fever," she muttered. She grabbed his wrist. "Pulse is racing. You're hyperventilating, Leo. You're having a panic attack. Did you forget to study for the math quiz?" "No," Leo tried to scream, but it came out as a whisper. He pointed to the locked glass cabinet on the wall. His EpiPen was in there. He could see it. "Please." Mrs. Gable shook her head. "I'm not giving you a shot of adrenaline for a panic attack. That would be dangerous. You need to sit down, put your head between your knees, and count to 10. Stop the drama." Leo sat on the cot. He was starting to get dizzy. The darkness was creeping in at the edges of his vision. He felt like a giant hand was crushing his chest. Sam, bless his heart, realized that the adult in the room was not going to help. He realized that the authority figure was the enemy. Sam pulled out his cell phone. Phones were strictly banned during school hours. Mrs. Gable saw him. "Sam, put that away." Sam ignored her. He dialed my number. That was the call I received. While I was driving, Mrs. Gable continued to lecture my dying son. She told him he was being disruptive. She told him that if he didn't calm down, she would call the principal. She interpreted his gasping for air as hyperventilating. She interpreted his inability to speak as stubbornness. She was watching a child go into anaphylactic shock, and she was diagnosing him with bad behavior. I have never driven like that in my life. I drove my SUV up the shoulder of the highway. I ran 3 red lights. I didn't care. If a cop pulled me over, he was coming with me. I pulled up to the front of the school in 8 minutes flat. I didn't park in a spot. I left the car running in the fire lane, the door open. I sprinted to the front doors. They were locked. Security protocol. I didn't ring the buzzer. I pounded on the glass with such force that the receptionist looked up in terror and buzzed me in immediately. I didn't stop at the desk to sign in. I ran down the hallway. I burst into the nurse's office. The door slammed against the wall with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. The scene, I walked and it froze my blood. Leo was lying on the cot. He wasn't moving. His face was a pale, grayish color. His lips were a distinctive, terrifying shade of blue. Sam was standing over him, crying, holding Leo's hand. Mrs. Gable was sitting at her desk, aggressively typing on her computer. She looked up, startled. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, standing up. "You cannot just barge in here. I was just about to call you. Leo is having a severe behavioral episode, and I didn't even look at her. I looked at my son. I could hear the silence. He wasn't wheezing anymore. That's worse. That means no air is moving at all. I moved. I crossed the room in 2 strides. I went to the glass cabinet. It was locked. "Key," I roared. "Give me the key." "Mr. Reynolds, you need to calm down," Mrs. Gable said, stepping between me and the cabinet. "He does not need medication. He needs discipline. If you give him that shot, you are liable for..." I didn't hit her. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Instead, I shoved her aside with my shoulder. She stumbled back against her desk. I grabbed the metal chair from the guest corner and swung it. Crash! The glass of the medical cabinet shattered. Shards rained down onto the floor. I reached in, ignoring the glass that sliced my hand. I grabbed the yellow box, the EpiPen. I ripped the package open. I pulled the blue safety cap off. I ran to Leo. I didn't bother pulling his pants down. The needle is designed to go through denim. "Leo, Daddy's here," I whispered. I swung my arm and drove the auto-injector into his outer thigh. I held it there. 1, 2, 3. I felt the mechanism fire. I pulled it out and rubbed the spot. "Come on, buddy," I begged. "Come on." For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Mrs. Gable was screaming behind me now. "I'm calling the police. You're crazy. You destroyed school property." Then a gasp. It was the sweetest sound I have ever heard. Leo's back arched. He sucked in a jagged, desperate breath of air. Then another. Then he started to cough. Color began to return to his cheeks. He opened his eyes. They were unfocused, terrified. "It's okay," I cried, stroking his hair. "I got you. I got you." The wail of sirens cut through the air. I had called 911 from the car. The paramedics rushed in moments later. They pushed me aside, gently, and took over. They put an oxygen mask on him. They checked his vitals. "Anaphylaxis," the lead paramedic shouted. "Pulse is thready but stabilizing. Good job on the AP, Dad. You probably saved him. We need to transport immediately." They loaded Leo onto the stretcher. I stood up, my legs shaking uncontrollably. I looked at my hand. It was bleeding from the glass. I turned to Mrs. Gable. She was standing by her desk, looking pale. Not because she was worried about Leo, but because she realized the paramedics had just confirmed he was dying. Her narrative of panic attack had just been destroyed by medical reality. She tried to pivot immediately. "Well," she stammered, smoothing her skirt. "He must have taken a turn very quickly. He was fine a moment ago. I was monitoring him closely." She was lying. She was lying to cover her tracks. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. The rage was there, but it had calcified into something cold and hard. "Sam," I said to the boy who was still standing in the corner, "go with the paramedics. Hold Leo's hand. I'll meet you at the hospital." Sam ran out. I took out my phone. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Gable asked, her voice trembling. "You can't take photos in here. HIPAA regulations." "I'm not taking photos of a patient," I said. "I'm taking photos of a crime scene." I walked over to her desk. Her logbook was open. I snapped a high-resolution photo of the open page. There was in her handwriting, 1:15 p.m., Leo R. complains of throat/breathing. No visible swelling. Vitals normal. Assessment, anxiety/psychosomatic. Intervention, rest and breathing exercises. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 1:28 p.m. 13 minutes, I said quietly. "You watched him suffocate for 13 minutes, and you wrote psychosomatic." I snapped a photo of the shattered cabinet. I snapped a photo of the EpiPen on the floor. You're going to lose your job, Mrs. Gable spat, trying to regain her authority. Destruction of property. Assaulting a staff member. I'll have you arrested. I walked to the door. I turned back one last time. Mrs. Gable, I said, you better pray he survives. Because if he doesn't, I'm not coming for your job. I'm coming for your freedom. Leo spent 2 days in the pediatric ICU. The rebound effect of anaphylaxis is real, and his body had been through hell. But he survived. By the time I brought him home, the war had already begun. The school district went into damage control mode immediately. The principal called me the next day. He was sweating. I could hear it in his voice. Mr. Reynolds, he said, we're so relieved Leo is okay. We'd like to have a meeting to discuss moving forward. Perhaps we can arrange for private tutoring for Leo while he recovers. The district is prepared to cover all medical expenses, of course. They were trying to buy my silence. They wanted me to sign a waiver. They wanted this to go away. I'll be at the school board meeting on Tuesday, I said. Mr. Reynolds, the principal warned. That is a public forum. Personnel matters like Mrs. Gable's employment are confidential. You cannot discuss them there. Watch me, I said, and hung up. I didn't go alone. I hired the nastiest, most aggressive personal injury attorney in the city, a man named Mr. Sterling. Sterling didn't just chase ambulances. He chased bureaucratic incompetence. When we reviewed the case, Sterling actually smiled. They don't have a leg to stand on, he said. We have a 911 call. I have a recording of Sam calling me. I said, my phone records all incoming calls from unknown numbers. It's a business app. Perfect, Sterling said. And the logbook photo, crystal clear. We aren't just suing the district, Sterling said, leaning back. We are filing a formal complaint with the State Board of Nursing. Negligence, incompetence, failure to act. We're going to nuke her license from orbit. Tuesday night came. The school board meeting was packed. Word had gotten around. Parents were terrified. I sat in the front row. Mrs. Gable was there, sitting with the union representative. She looked defiant. She clearly thought the union would protect her. She thought tenure and experience were magic shields. When it was time for public comment, I stood up. The board president tried to stop me. Mr. Reynolds, we cannot discuss specific employee performance reviews in this setting. I'm not discussing a performance review, I said into the microphone. I'm discussing a safety policy failure that nearly killed a student. I didn't give a speech. I gave a presentation. I projected the photo of the logbook onto the screen. This is the official record, I said. 1:15 p.m. Assessment, anxiety. Then I played the audio. I held the microphone up to my phone speakers. The sound filled the auditorium. Sam's voice, he's turning blue. The wheeze of my son dying. And then Mrs. Gable's voice stopped the drama. Leo is just having a panic attack. The room gasped. A collective, horrified intake of breath from 300 parents. Mrs. Gable's face went white. She hadn't known about the recording. She stared at the table, refusing to look up. My son's brain was deprived of oxygen for 13 minutes. I said, my voice shaking with controlled rage. Because this woman decided that her personal annoyance was more important than a doctor's diagnosis. I pointed at her. She ignored the 504 plan. She ignored the symptoms. She ignored the pleas of a child. I turned to the board members. You have a choice tonight. You can keep employing a nurse who diagnoses anaphylaxis as drama, or you can fire her. But know this, my lawyer is sitting in the back row. I gestured to Sterling, who gave a polite little wave. We have already filed a report with the state board. We have filed a police report for child endangerment. If she's employed by this district tomorrow morning, I will sue every single one of you personally for enabling child abuse. I dropped the mic. Not literally, I placed it back on the stand. But the effect was the same. Mrs. Gable's union rep whispered something to her. She looked like she was going to be sick. She realized, finally, that the drama was real, and she was the villain. The board went into emergency executive session immediately. 20 minutes later, They came out. The board president looked pale. "Effective immediately," he announced. "Mrs. Gable's employment with the district is terminated for cause." There was applause. Actual applause from the parents. But that wasn't enough for me. Getting her fired just meant she could go work at a summer camp or a private school. I wanted to make sure she never touched a patient again. 6 months later, the State Board of Nursing held a hearing. I testified. Sam testified. The paramedics testified. Mrs. Gable tried to argue that she was old school and that she made a judgment call. The board didn't buy it. They ruled that her failure to assess vitals properly, her refusal to follow the standing medical order, the 504 plan, and her dismissal of the patient's complaints constituted gross negligence. They revoked her nursing license. Permanently. She is 60 years old. She lost her career, her pension, and her reputation. She is now unhireable in the medical field. Last I heard, she was working the checkout counter at a grocery store 2 towns over. As for the lawsuit, the district settled. They wrote a check for a number that has 2 commas in it. Every cent of it went into a trust fund for Leo. It will pay for his college, his grad school, and his first house. But the real victory wasn't the money. The district completely overhauled their allergy protocols. They implemented a new policy officially named Leo's Law. Under the new rules, school nurses are stripped of judgment calls regarding anaphylaxis. If a student with a known allergy reports ingestion or symptoms, the EpiPen is mandatory. Immediate administration. No temperature checks. No lectures about anxiety. Just a shot. Leo is doing great now. He's back in soccer. He carries his EpiPen like a badge of honor. Sometimes when I drop him off at school, I look at the nurse's office. There's a new nurse there. She's young, sharp, and she takes allergies very seriously. Mrs. Gable thought my son was faking it. She thought she knew better. She learned the hard way that when it comes to the safety of a child, there is no such thing as drama. There is only life and death. And I chose life. And I chose justice.